As we move into the strategy element of this, one of the things as I talk to school systems out there, I talk about this is not a technology initiative. This is a district strategic initiative, and the only way it's going to be successful is if you have a cross-functional team working on this project from the very beginning. So when I talk about cross-functional teams, I don't know how every district is set up, but I know the roles exist. Whether you're a district of 400 students or 215,000 students, these roles exist in every single school system out there. So here are the roles that really are critical. One, it has to involve the curriculum department, right? They have to involve professional development. It has to involve the technology department. It has to involve the school's office, those people responsible for principals. It has to involve the professional development. It has to involve your community, your community engagement people. It has to involve your communication staff. Those are the elements that have to be involved in this from the very beginning. So if we take a look at what technology brings to the table, technology brings to the table the fundamentals of your infrastructure. But more importantly, what often happens with these initiatives is the project management is something that gets dumped onto an individual that's in a fairly senior leadership role in the district. And this is an add-on to their already packed agenda of things they're responsible for. So one of the things that I always recommend is this type of initiative needs a pure project manager. Somebody that this is their bread and butter. They understand how to put project plans together. They understand how to put milestones. They understand dependencies, cause and effect. So what technology can do is they can bring that individual to the table that says, I am the project manager for this. And then the obvious elements of technology is they have to be responsible for the infrastructure, right? So you have to look at your bandwidth. You have to look at your wireless capacity. You have to look at your device management, your data and security management. These are all the things that technology brings to the table. And those are fundamental. But one of the things that I've seen now, having been in this since 2008, is the technology side of this is the easiest part of doing a digital transformation. What's often overlooked from the technology team that often will slow them and grind them to a halt is they have to philosophically change what their traditional support models look like, right? The days of command and control and lockdown and manage, as you embark on this digital transformation, those days are gone. There's no way you can sustain it. It has to look differently. So what does support look like as you embark on a digital transformation? The analogy that I use is in that traditional lockdown command and control, if I walked into a room, I was responsible for all 15 lights in that room. Technology was responsible to make sure when that light switch went on, everything worked fine. As you embark on a digital transformation, maybe technology is only responsible for 7 of those lights. And the other 8 lights have to be the responsibility of somebody else. This is a very difficult thing for the propeller heads, the engineers, to get their arms around. The minute they don't control everything, they feel like there's going to be anarchy out there. And so this is something that CIOs have to really work through with their staff to define what this new support model looks like. They have to be quick, they have to be agile, they have to be responsive. There is websites coming up all the time that are incredibly relevant to education. And how are you going to be responsive to that teacher out there who is on that leading edge who says, you know what, this is the best thing for kids and we need to provide that. So that's a little bit about the technology. The last thing I will say is you need trending and forecasting. That's an absolute necessity. You need to be able to trend and forecast your broadband utilization. You need to trend and forecast your wireless utilization. You want to be ahead of the problems rather than reacting to teachers calling you saying, I can't get on the network. At that point, you've already lost that war. From a curriculum perspective, these are the people that traditionally sat in the rooms during the summer and wrote the curriculum for the next year. And what we did in HISD is, as we started down this digital transformation, we knew that this group of people, they really didn't understand what digital transformation looks like. And so it's often thought of that the most professional development that we need to do is for our teachers. And I would not argue that, but what I would tell you is we need to do as much professional development for our curriculum and for our professional development teams. To make the assumption that our curriculum department knows what digital transformation looks like and a digital curriculum, what it looks like, is just a false assumption. So what we did is with our curriculum team, we sent them to training so that they understood what this looked like. So as they came back and started to write the curriculum, they had an idea of what it was to write curriculum and use digital content in a digital sense. And these are the people that are responsible for curating, creating, and procuring all of our digital content. Our first preference is that we're creating the digital content. So we want to go out and use as many resources that are out there to create our curriculum. If we can't do that, then we'll go buy it. We'll bring it in off the shelf. And lastly, we'll use textbooks and we'll use things like that. But it's a completely different mindset, and they need to know that these resources are out there and how do I incorporate them in. They also need to understand what the tools are. What does the Web 2.0 environment look like, and how, as a 7th grade biology teacher or a 7th grade math teacher, how do I use Web 2.0? If they understand what that looks like, then they can write the curriculum that incorporates the appropriate tools. And then we have lots of third-party vendors out there that are providing great content. So how do these people, how does the curriculum department leverage them? As I mentioned, the professional development team, we sent them to training as well to make the assumption that they understood what it looked like to model and train teachers in this environment. Again, I think is a bad assumption. So we sent them to training so they understood what this looked like. And they're really in the district to provide that modeling and that observation, all those things that teachers really need. Now, one of the things that we found is when we did our professional development, our teachers, we didn't have a bad report coming out of professional development, but what they said is, we would like to move out of the general, all the teachers come and sit, and we would like to have it broken down by content area. So now we're working with math teachers. So I know as a math teacher, here's how I can use this. But more importantly, what we would like is to have it differentiated. So I have my power users together. I have my testers together, and I have my resistors all in a room, because it was really irritating for those people who were struggling to sit in a room with 3/4 of the audience being the early adopters, and they were off and running. They never felt like they could ask their questions, and they kind of sat in the back. So we've really differentiated our training, and so it's by content area, and it's by where you're at in the continuum, your maturity continuum. And that's proved to be very beneficial. Our instructional people, they go out and they do a lot of observation. We use the TIM model as our observation tool to help teachers understand, here's where you're at in the maturity matrix of a digital transformation, here's where you're very strong, here's where you're very weak. The thing about adopting some type of standard observation tool is it levels the playing field. When we did not have the TIM observation tool, what we found is there are lots of people coming from the central building to go out and observe, and their observations were based on what they thought digital transformation looked like and where they thought that campus should be. And so if I'm that campus principal and I have 5 people come observe me with 5 different levels of observation and expectation, when I get that feedback, what do I do with it, right? There's so much inconsistency, and it's so wide in what really is reality. So that's why we adopted the TIM model. Now, anybody who goes out and observes at one of our Power Up campuses, they're using that framework. More importantly, they're using the history of what the other observations have seen. So now we have a very consistent model to say, here's where we're at. From a principal's perspective, it also gives them the ability to say, Lenny Shad, here's where you're starting the school year at, here's where you're at in that maturity matrix, and here's where I really want you to be at the end of the year, and here are the things we're going to do to help you along the way, and here's what I'm looking for. So it really helped us in that perspective. Obviously, we use a lot of outside help. We've partnered with Mooresville. Mooresville is a rural school district. They're well known for their one-to-one. There's 6,000 kids. HISD is 215,000. But what we found and what our belief is, and I think it's what everybody should adopt, is when you're doing it right, that's all we care about. And if we have districts out there who are willing to share their lessons learned and help us jumpstart our initiative, that's all we should be worried about. And that's what we've done with Mooresville. We've partnered with them to help in our professional development. Their teachers come up and they actually do observations of our teachers. There's really strong relationships. And what we found is it's a really safe zone. So our teachers feel very comfortable talking to the Mooresville teachers. So we've partnered there. We've partnered with Discovery Education to do Teacher Leader Corps. And so I would recommend that as you're looking at professional development, don't think it has to be all on your shoulders. There are lots of really good examples and people willing to share that can help jumpstart your professional development. From a campus leadership perspective, this is one thing that is absolutely locked in stone, non-negotiable in every case. The principal is the one who makes the transformation happen at the campus. If you have a principal who is not bought into this, who isn't pushing it, supporting it, and driving it, your adoption rate will be as fast as those early adopters on that campus can convince their peers to move along. You know, we saw in HISD in our first year, one of our campuses that was considered one of our leaders. We had some things happen, and we had some principal changes. And by the time school started into our second year, we were 2 months into that second year, and it was one of our worst high schools from an adoption perspective. And what that tells you is two things. One, principal leadership is critical, and two, this really is a cultural change. And just like a rubber band, that principal keeps that tension and that band stretched out. That minute that principal isn't there to keep that tension, that rubber band goes back to where it originally was, because that's where it's comfortable. That's what the teachers did. Without that principal there, they went back to their traditional mode of instruction. So the principals drive this. They own it. What we did in HISD is we made all of our principals define what success looks like. What are your critical success factors at your campus to say you are doing this digital transformation? What we found when we did that is there were a lot of similarities when we got the expectations back from principals, and those became our district standard of, okay, here is what our expectations are. And then we allowed the principals to have some unique ones based on their campus. The other thing that principals really do is they own their community. They are the ones who the community trusts. They are the ones that has the relationship with the power leaders in their community, and it's up to them to help in that when we talk about defining the how and the why. That principal is the one that really carries the water out into their community to make that happen. So the campus leadership is incredibly important. The community engagement, you know, parents, this is where it all stops. And if the parents are on board and they feel like that they've been included, that their issues have been heard, they're going to support this just because they know what environment their kids live in. It's funny because every time we talk about parent meetings, you know, I can't tell you how many campuses I've gone to, and you know, the principal says, wow, it's just, you know, I never get really good turnout, and, you know, don't expect a lot. Every single parent meeting we've had, the principal has said this has been one of the most well-attended meetings we've had in the history since I've been here. And again, that goes back to communicating and marketing. Parents want to come. And I will tell you, at those parent night meetings, we stay until the last question has been answered. I want the parents, again, to walk away with some sense of acceptance. They might not agree 100%, but they at least philosophically can accept what we're doing. And most of the parent night meetings center around safety and security, the technology, what are our expectations around use, you know, what happens if their kids lose it. But they're really important meetings because it really builds that consensus. The other thing from a community engagement perspective is working with local police departments. They are great resources for digital citizenship content. They're great resources to also make your community aware that, hey, we're about to have a lot of technology come out there, and you know, just be on the lookout for it. Businesses are a great opportunity for some external funding, and I guarantee you the private sector is as anxious for us to embark and embrace digital transformation as anybody out there, because we're creating their future employees. And the one thing that we hear from everybody is, you know, we need people who know how to work with projects. We need people who need to understand what collaboration looks like and how to appropriately use social media tools. So we're creating their future beds, so they actually have a lot of vested interest in making sure whatever we need that occurs. So they're a great resource for that. The other thing that I'll tell you about community engagement is, you know, while we are providing great wireless access at our schools, we know that there are pockets of our children that when they leave, they do not have access at home. And while I really believe that that gap is narrowing, with, you know, all of the various TV providers and how they bundle different things together, one of those things being wireless. I think that gap is narrowing, but we still have pockets. And so what you can do with your community engagement people is you can go out and work with your community centers and your restaurants and your churches to talk about, have you thought about putting a wireless infrastructure in? And that's what we've spent a lot of time going to apartment complexes and community centers just to talk about this. And the reception has been very good. So that's the area that they can really work on. The last area that you really take a look at is, you know, within the framework of this cross-functional team, there has to be an undertone of digital citizenship. And every one of these individuals on your cross-functional team, they need to be thinking through how digital citizenship can be embedded into whatever effort they're doing. And so digital citizenship is something that's often thought of as an afterthought. We've rolled it out, we're 2 months out, and now we need to start thinking about digital citizenship. And I will tell you, digital citizenship needs to start now in every school system, regardless of your position on digital transformation. We need to educate our kids how to be responsible digital citizens from the time they enter the kindergarten until they graduate from high school. And that's an element that needs to be put in there. The cross-functional team, you know, it's something that they understand what their role is. They understand what their role is in accomplishing our goal. And I will tell you, when issues occur, it is having this cross-functional team together from the very beginning that will get you through whatever issue comes up quickly to mediate and you know, eliminate any potential stoppage of your program. One of the things I remember is early on we had a problem. It was brought to the project team and my attention at 9 o'clock in the morning. I was in the middle of another meeting. By the time I walked into the project team's group, they had scheduled a meeting at 10 o'clock. They had already identified what was causing the problem. They had already identified how they were going to fix the problem. The problem was being rolled out, and we already had our communication ready to send out to parents and the media. And it took me all of 5 minutes to come in and review it and say, here's how we do it. If you look at some of the systems out there that have struggled, what has happened? They've had a lot of false starts where they've kicked the project off, the bump occurred, they had to stop, regroup, and that's because they didn't have this core team together from the very beginning. When it's together from the beginning, they understand why decisions were made, how decisions were made, and again, their role. So I can't stress this enough.